episode 16 of Everyday Eternal. News. We've got results from GP Paris, news on the newly updated modern band list just in time for the Pro Tour, a very brief Born of the Gods review, and Chinese counterfeits.
So, welcome back to Everyday Eternal Podcast. I'm Matt.
I'm Sam.
And we're going to talk about some things, because we've been off for a bit. So, Happy New Year, Happy Valentine's Day. It's been a while.
So, lots of news, lots of things in the news in the Eternal community. To start off with, we had GP Paris that just ended a couple days ago. 1,500
Literally yesterday.
Yesterday. 1,587 people, which is pretty good. That's, we said, about 300 people more than Bazaar of Mox in Paris was, and really Bazaar of Mox in Paris had better prizes. The top 8 is from 1st to 8th, Team America, Miracles, Reanimator, Miracles, Painter, Team America, Deathblade, and another Miracles. To round out the top 16, there's an Esperblade, Nick Fit, Canadian Thresh, Elves, a Lands that's very combo style. It's got 4 Crop Rotation, 4 Intuition, 4 Living Wish, and 3 Sneak and Show. Initial thoughts, Matt?
Oh, well, basically what I was predicting going in was going to be the decks that either beat True Nemesis, the decks that don't care about True Nemesis, or the decks that prey on either of those decks. So that's usually a combo deck. So if we look at the Team America list that Bob Huang and Dan Signorini have been playing for ages, the deck's pretty good. I'm not saying it's the best deck in the format, much like Bob is, but it plays first. It does well. It has good game against True Nemesis. Miracles totally crushes True Nemesis-based decks. I've been playing Miracles for the past month now, and I've been 11-0 in tournaments, so it's been pretty good. Reanimator, again, just does not care. Painter preys on all the blue decks. I mean, it's running, 5-6 Blast main. Deathblade has always been a good deck. It is the only True Nemesis deck, actually, that top-8'd. The other Team America list did.
The other Team America listed, the 6th place Team America list, played a couple true names,
but none in the top 4.
Correct.
So, and 3 Miracles in the top 8, which is pretty amazing. The rest of the top 16 is pretty expected. Elves is very good. Canadian Thresh. It's actually not Canadian Thresh, though. It's like next level Thresh.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's like Rug mid-range, which I said was an unexplored archetype that needed to be talked about more, and this person obviously did well with it. Nick Fit, interesting. The Lens list, that deck shouldn't exist.
Yeah, it's a very interesting deck. It's not the Jund list that's been big on the Star City circuit over the last month. It's blue-green, and that's it. And it's, when looking at it, the only way I think to explain it is it's basically a combo deck.
It reminds me a lot of the Eternal Garden, the old 43 lands list that was a little bit different than the traditional 43 lands lists. Like, this one is, and so was the Eternal Garden, more in on like crop rotations and stuff like that. So, and then the 3 Sneak and Show. So again, combo, anti-TNN, anti-combo / anti-TNN.
Yeah, and you're addressing something I really wanted to make sure we talked about, was that if somebody asked me what I thought the top 8, top 16 of GP Paris was going to look like, I would have said combo heavy. First, you've got the stereotype of Europe as having a very strong combo-based meta. But Miracles I find interesting because how do you beat combo? Well, Miracles is one of your best ways to do so. And the focus on combo, besides just the stereotype of being in Europe and having a combo-heavy metagame, all of these combo decks, they don't care about True Name Nemesis. You resolved a 3-1 on turn 3, maybe turn 2. That's great. You already lost the game.
I mean, when you're running, at least I know when in my Miracles deck, I'm running 3 to 4 Swords of Plowshares, Engineered Explosive, Supreme Verdict, Terminus, and then out of the board, you're probably running another Terminus / Supreme Verdict, and then a Moat or something like that. Like, your 3-1 doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is Gaddock Teak, and no one's playing it, so have fun.
Sure. Any other thoughts on Grand Prix Paris?
Well, I think that people are saying that, sure, True Nemesis shouldn't be banned, and it's true, because you only see 5 actual copies in the top 8. However, every single deck here is either designed to beat, ignore, or beat the decks that play True Nemesis. Like, it's a pretty polarizing card, even if it's not actually putting up the numbers. Looking at it is pretty ridiculous.
Sure, and I don't really think there's anything wrong with that. I think the way I have phrased it to myself is basically True Name Nemesis is a force to be reckoned with, but it's not overly so. It's not, 6 decks in the top 8. It's just something that you have to be prepared to deal with. Just like any combo deck, you have to be prepared to deal with it, and if you're not, that's really your fault for not preparing for the metagame.
And the question is that considered too polarizing, basically? I mean, I know we were talking about, like, when Mental Misstep was around, it was in, how many of the decks in the top 8, how many people were using it, and one of the definitions that they used to ban Mental Misstep was because it was reducing format diversity. And I think you could still say that True Nemesis is still reducing format diversity, because you are just producing a bunch of decks, or the only decks that are good and can compete are these few.
See, I don't know about that. Like, look at the top 16 here. You've got 12 different decks, which is pretty good for a top 16. A lot of times, when, especially like on the Star Cities target, you're seeing as many or as low as 5 or 6 decks in the top 16.
Yeah, I'm just saying, some people are going to argue that, though.
Certainly. But I will not be one of them.
Fair enough. Other than that, there was the cheating thing that they were talking about. So do you remember reading about that?
I've read a little bit about that. I haven't seen any really confirmed information about it, so I don't feel really qualified to speak about what's happened. What we know for a fact is that a judge was called for something related to Deathrite Shaman. He gave, I believe it was a warning, is that correct?
Yeah, I think it was a warning at first.
And then later, the player was disqualified, meaning most likely they saw something again, or they decided that maybe this was not an innocent mistake, it qualified as straight up cheating. But other than that, we don't really have enough information quite yet. I'm sure more will be coming out over the next week or two.
Yeah, so I mean, basically some people are kind of pissed because they waited apparently a few rounds to do it, and then PV got into the top 8 when maybe he shouldn't have. But you know what? If the guy was cheating, this I don't know his name, whatever. If this person was cheating, you don't deserve to be in the top 8. So what would suck, though, if it was misconstrued as cheating, but again, I don't know the whole story, so we'll wait to see. Once a little more information comes out, then we can talk about it a little bit more.
And on the subject of gigantic tournaments, or at least major tournaments, we've got a Modern Pro Tour coming up, and with that, we've just had a very large change to the Modern Banned Unbanned list.
Oh, they did something about that finally?
Well,
I'm just kidding.
So, our 3 changes, all of these I think can be considered major changes. Deathrite Shaman banned, which is interesting. Wild Nacatl unbanned, which a lot of people expected. And Bitter Blossom unbanned, which a lot of people have been shocked by. So, Matt, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think personally that they need to fix the fucking ban list in that format, because you're banning so many cards that should be played or at least be tried in the format. There's a problem where these cards have been banned since the inception of the format, very similar to what Legacy is going through. There's so many cards that need to come off to at least be tried. So I'm glad that they unbanned Wild Nacatl, because that's just a really stupid choice. You actually want to push aggro, right? Bitter Blossom unban? Perfect. You've got another archetype going. Whether Fairies is going to be good enough, I don't know. Deathrite Shaman being banned kind of concerned me. Now, I'm a big proponent of Deathrite Shaman. My life changed when Deathrite Shaman was printed. I love this card. However, is it too good for Modern? I don't play enough Modern to really say how good it is, but I'm assuming if there's no aggro in the format, you've got some control and some combo, your mid-range decks are going to be pretty good when you're still running Dark Confidant, Tarmogoyf.
When you're running Legacy mid-range in Modern.
Yeah, I still think it's pretty good. Could they have banned something else? I would have preferred that they unban cards first to see if that will help adjust the metagame. So I think, personally, what they should have done is, I think Stoneforge Mystic is a little bit too good for Modern. I just think that your answers and the amount of cards that actually outclass Stoneforge Mystic are few and far between. I think actually unbanning Jace the Mind Sculptor and Thopter Foundry would have been okay. I know a lot of people aren't going to agree with that, but I like both of those cards a lot. So I think maybe pushing control a little bit more to kind of balance out the mid-range would have been okay, while still unbanning Bitter Blossom and Wild Cattle, just to see what happens. And in 6 months, if the format doesn't shake itself up enough, and mid-range is still too good, then you can take an extra step at looking and say, hey, does Deathrite Shaman need to be banned? I would prefer to have more cards in the pool than less.
So I think what happened here is I think Wild Nacatl is an obvious unbanning. That's something that people have been expecting for a couple cycles now. So I'm glad that something like that I don't really think will warp the format in a negative way. I'm glad that's there. I think they really wanted to ban Bitter Blossom, but they wanted there to be a bit more format diversity, and I think if you just unban Bitter Blossom, that you see a lot of the same mid-range decks that are playing Deathrite Shaman, Liliana, just throwing Bitter Blossom in there, and that the reason that they banned Deathrite Shaman was to keep a Deathrite Shaman Bitter Blossom deck from happening.
Yeah, that's also true. I mean, that deck would have been pretty good. However, I don't know. Like I said,
I will say I was disappointed by the Deathrite Shaman ban, primarily because, like I said, you were playing essentially a legacy mid-range deck, and I was about to buy my shocks just to say, okay, you know what, I already own most of this deck because I play legacy, and then they banned Deathrite Shaman, and I'm like, oh man, is that still going to be a deck? Do I have to buy more cards that I can't play in legacy? Yeah, but I have been following the format a bit more closely. I'm trying and get into it and learn a little bit more about it. Somebody commented that we need to be making less fun of Modern, because it is a real format. Obviously, there are Pro Tours for it, so...
Yeah, apparently. But, whatever. I think the format is still fine, don't get me wrong. I mean, I know we tease it because it's kind of like Legacy's little cousin, but it's fine. I mean, I just think that they're taking a very different approach than the way that I would. Do you know what I mean? They're just really limiting the cards that we can use, the cards that are unbanned. I just want to use as many cards as possible. That's all I want.
And my biggest concern, again, has always been that with these constant changes, that it's very hard for me to justify getting into a format where I may have to buy a completely new deck in 6 months, which is definitely not the case in Vintage or Legacy.
Yeah, well, depending on when you join the format, Turn to Nemesis might have crushed your hopes and dreams.
Now, one thing people have thought of as a possible thing to fix the Modern ban list is having a stated policy of banning, unbanning every 3 months and actually doing systematic attempts at unbanning. Like, hey, we're just going to try this. If it doesn't work, we can reban it. And I think that's something that it almost looks like they're trying that, but if it was stated, it might give a little bit more confidence to the format.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I knew in advance that cards were going to be systematically banned and unbanned, I mean, I think major price changes might be a little bit more stable, because, I mean, if you say, hey, this card is going to be unbanned, and in 3 months from now it will be banned again...
It will be in 3 months from now it will be banned again if it is too powerful.
Then, I mean, people aren't going to... I mean, mind you, the price could still spike and then just really drop when people... try to unload them right when they get banned. I mean, I don't know. I would just like them to actually work on the formats instead of just being very hands-off and not doing anything.
And now, you're pointing out prices, and especially these spikes during banning and unbannings. Bitter Blossom, I think, maxed out at about $85 on TCG Player after the unbanning. It's now gone back down to, I won't say a more reasonable level, but less than that. And there was an article on, I believe it was Brainstorm Brewery, that was discussing people a lot of times like to hate on so-called speculators, people who hold a lot of cards that they're not playing, and it called modern players I can't remember exactly what the term was, but the thesis of this article was that a lot of modern players have to essentially be speculators, otherwise they're going to have to spend a few $100s every banning and unbanning season. And I think that, again, goes back to there's not a lot of confidence in the format, so people are buying cards and just holding on to them, hoping that maybe they'll be playable eventually.
Well, I think it's reasonable to say, like, if you bought a set of Bitter Blossoms 2 months ago, and we're like, maybe they'll unban this, but then there's the people who are buying 20 sets of Bitter Blossom and going, I hope they unban this.
Well, sure, and there is a difference there.
And I think even if you're a Legacy player and you just go through the banned list and go, yeah, I should pick up a playset of everything that's reasonable just in case it gets unbanned, and that would be fair. And you know what? If I wasn't trying to finish my Beta Dual Land set, I'd be doing the same thing.
But as I said, I'm trying to get a little bit more into Modern just so we can speak a little more knowledgeably about it. Right now, I don't know what I'll be picking up. I'll probably start with something similar to the Jund deck simply because I have it. I wanted to play Eggs, but they banned that deck, so we'll see how it works.
Now you can just play Eggs in Legacy.
No, definitely not.
No? Okay. So
no, if I'm going to play a deck that makes me want to punch myself in the dick, it's going to be High Tide.
Okay, fine. But Eggs... But you can lose to Stony Silence.
Yeah, I don't...
Okay, well let's move on to a set review of this awful, awful set that just came.
A set review of Spirit of the Labyrinth.
Basically. So let's go through every other card first.
No, let's not.
No, hold on, let's wait. Let's try to think of any other cards we should talk about first.
I don't have a whole lot to say about this card, but so many insane plays spent 10 or 15 minutes on Kiora, and I was very questionable about Kiora when I first saw it, but Steven basically thinks that there's the possibility that it will be playable in a Gush-based deck, where maybe with Lotus Cobra, where you're playing it on, say, turn 2, and then producing 5 mana off a fetch land the next turn by playing, replaying, fetching. It's certainly an interesting idea. It's more brewing than I would have done. I think Matt disagrees with me, but you gotta brew. You gotta come up with something new, so I'll definitely be interested to see if anything comes of that.
I think the card's garbage. Don't play it. Kiora's fine. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm sure all the EDH players are really excited that they now have a blue-green planeswalker that does things. And it's cool, it looks fun. It's not Legacy playable, therefore I'm not interested.
Well, you know, Alex Bertoncini tweeted that he was very happy with the printing of this card.
He's happy he's not in shackles for cheating all the time. I don't know. Like, I'm not going to talk about that now, but I had to say something. He just liked the fact that it's green because it's the same color as Explore. I don't know.
No, it's one of its abilities is Explore.
Oh, well, there you go. Point being, let's look at all the other cards in the set we should review. Let's give it a moment while we think about all the other cards that might be remotely playable.
There's Painseer, which is fake Bob.
Yeah, I think Painseer is interesting. Because it's a 2/2, so meaning it doesn't die to -1/-1 effects that are now in the format. But you basically have to attack or tap him somehow to get the card.
Which realistically means you have to attack or probably play Springleaf Drum, which is in this set, interestingly enough.
So maybe this is an affinity card waiting to happen. I don't think they need it, though. So what's happening?
No, they have, you know, Gush for 1 blue, so that's fine.
Well, maybe if you're playing some sort of like crazy mono black deck where you're killing all their guys, like it's just like gatekeeper.deck.
Like an Apox deck?
Yeah.
But even in a Apox deck, would you want to play Painseer over just Bob?
I don't know. Anyway, you probably wouldn't want to play either in a Apox deck because you'd have to sacrifice him, but I know what you mean. So basically, I'm just going to come out and say that this set was a really big disappointment for Legacy playable cards. However, there is one, I would say dull example. Some people are going to say shining example of Legacy playable, but Spirit of the Labyrinth. Sam, take it away.
Spirit of the Labyrinth is 1 and a white. It's a 3/1, so already you're doing pretty well relative to, you know, power toughness on that cost. Each player can't draw more than 1 card each turn. This is obviously insane against Brainstorm and pretty much every blue deck ever.
So the question is, does it matter? In my opinion, it does not. Is this card good? Conditionally. Would I play it in any deck except Death and Taxes, and even then, not even sure if it's good enough? No.
Really, so, I think that's interesting.
I'll tell you why. My opinion is this. Okay, so it is a 3/1 that's tutorable with a Lightning Tutor that prevents cantripping. That seems good unto itself. The problem is, they're probably going to get a Brainstorm before you put it down, possibly, or a Brainstorm in response. does that matter enough? I don't think it does. Because you can still respond to it with the Swords to Plowshares, you can still remove it. All these blue decks are interested in drawing extra cards, don't get me wrong. But I mean, beyond 4 Brainstorm and 2 Ponders that most decks are playing, or even just say 4 Brainstorm, does anyone really care? So I mean, I'm playing Deathblade, and I go Stoneforge, Mystic, Jite. You have your little 3-1, I can't draw extra cards, great. So he dies, and then I just draw cards. So, my issue is this: he only becomes really backbreaking when the opponent brainstorms, and then he enters the battlefield in response.
Well, I think this is a card that you really can't look at in a vacuum. I think that it's something where if you pair this with, say, Aven Mind Sensor, where now their deck is essentially the way it is on the table now is the way it's going to be for the rest of the game, and they're not going to be able to go through things. That's where I think this card in Legacy is going to really shine.
Well, okay, so I mean, I've asked a bunch of Death and Taxes players if they're going to be playing it, and a few are going to be playing a couple in the sideboard, but most people aren't going to be playing it. The only deck that really can play it, in my opinion, is Death and Taxes, and even they are a little bit skeptical of it. That's my kind of opinion. I think the best way to do it is to flash it in, so Aether Vial.
Certainly, Brainstorm in response, I'll Vial in this Spirit of the Labyrinth, and just you don't get to do anything.
And nut you. So I think would this card be playable if it was a flash? So say it was the same cost as Aven Mind Sensor. It was a 3-1, everything was the same, 3 mana, I would play it. But without the flash, it makes it a little bit worse. And by a little bit, I mean enough that I'm not going to be playing it.
I think where this is going to be more played is Vintage.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this card will be played in Vintage, no problem.
Because, essentially, the only deck that its ability does not matter to is Mud. Would you agree?
I'd agree. I mean, I think some decks were playing Staff of Nin or whatever, which lets them draw an extra card, but, that's not your main win condition or anything.
But even then, its ability isn't super relevant to Mud, but its 3 power is extremely relevant. Killing Lodestone Golem with something that you play turn 1 is excellent.
That's also true. Yeah, I didn't think about that. That seems okay.
Now, this does have to go in lists that historically have not been as powerful. You're looking at probably something like a fish list, maybe a Bant, or even a sort of Death and Taxes style deck that we don't really have in Vintage right now. That might be something that's able to become a little more powerful with something like Aven Mind Sensor, Leonin Arbiter, maybe Splashing Green for Gaddock Teague, and Termagoyf for the things that are going to go in their graveyard because they get immediately countered or something.
Yeah. I think it could be interesting. Also, I think we did actually forget one card in the set review.
Oh, what's that?
Brimaz, the Cat King. Oh, you actually have to look it up. Wow.
Oh, I did remember what it did. I just want to make sure that I read it because it does a lot of things. Brimaz, King of Oriscos? I'm going to say that's King of Oreos. It's
Perfect.
one white legendary cat soldier. It's a 3/4, so we're doing pretty well for 3 mana. Vigilance, whenever it attacks, put a 1/1 white cat soldier token with Vigilance onto the battlefield attacking. Whenever it blocks, put that same token into play, blocking the creature.
So basically, he attacks for 3, you're immediately attacking for 4, with a Vigilance guy, right? So then whenever you block, you're also going to get an extra power and toughness in your blocking. So essentially, he will block as a 4/5, and he will attack as a 4/5. However, the 4/5 in the attack is separate. How good is this? Think about True Nemesis. So, you play Brimaz. Great, they have a True Nemesis with no equipment. True Nemesis swings? Great. 3. You swing back for 4. He tries to block. True Nemesis doesn't kill this guy. He has Vigilance. Vigilance is very good.
They either take 1 from the cat, or they take 3 from Brimaz, which they're going to take 1 from the cat.
So, I think a deck that actually really appreciates this card is a deck that plays Cabal Therapy, so like a Dead Guy Ale list would really like this card, as well as Death Taxes. Now, a few of my friends have been playing Death and Taxes with this card and have said this guy is insane. And not only did they want 3, they wanted 4. Plus, you're already playing 4 Caracas, so you're always protecting this guy, and you have Vile. So you could always Vile this guy.
Vile him into block so that you
and
have...
And then block as a 4/5.
With if the 1/1 survives, with an extra creature next turn that can attack.
Yeah.
Where I definitely see this being played, not that this is a major archetype or deck, is there's a local player who plays what he calls Death and Death. It's essentially Death and Taxes, but he can't afford the more expensive bits like Caracases, Rashidan Ports, so he just plays more aggressive stuff. And,
yeah, I think it's called Hate Crimes is the deck.
And Brimaz, next to Hero of Bladehold, you're just going to have to pick up your cards.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I have lost to Hero of Bladehold. That card is really, really good if you don't take care of it immediately.
I can imagine.
And that's the card that I would immediately compare this to. And I think it's interesting that you say 3 or 4 in Death and Taxes when Hero of Bladehold is not in a lot of Death and Taxes decks.
Oh, how much mana does Hero cost?
Hero is 3, isn't it?
No, it's 4.
Oh, it's 4. Okay, well that would explain that.
Yeah, I'm very certain it's 4.
It is. You're correct. You're correct.
I know I am. It's okay. So we also have some viewer questions that we'd like to answer before we move on to the topic that we've been waiting to talk about for a long time. So Sith says, when's the next episode coming out? Sith will tell you when the next episode is coming out.
It's when you're listening to this.
Yeah. So we're talking about non-rotating formats, comparing Modern and Legacy. Let's not bash Modern. No, come on. We gotta bash Modern. It's great. It's great. Why would you not want us to do that? Any other... Now I'm just looking on the Facebook page. Let's actually answer some questions as opposed to not answering these questions. Let's try to find them.
I have a question for you while you're scrolling through these on the subject of our set review.
Yeah.
This is something that I was thinking of last night when preparing my notes for this. As an Eternal player, specifically Legacy and Vintage,
yeah,
how many cards do you expect to get per year now? And when I say get, I mean how many new cards do you expect to come out that you're interested in?
I think as an Eternal player, I should see 1 card per set that is remotely playable. So I'm talking about, if it's as playable as Spirit of the Labyrinth, it doesn't have to be a hate card, but as long as it's like, somebody might include this in their deck somewhere, that's what I want to see.
Right, so what would your number be? 4 then? For 3 sets
4.
and a core?
Yeah.
I was looking at this question, and I thought, okay, so you have 3 sets, you have a core set, you also have your summer product. And most of the time your core set is about 90% reprints, so the core set is really just like half a set. And I think 4 cards a year, 1 out of each set and 1 out of your summer product or the core set, I think 4 is I'm satisfied with.
I think it's fair.
And our summer set this year is we're not going to talk extensively about it. It's a multiplayer based set, as Commander is and so forth, but it's primarily based on drafting and things that are especially interesting in multiplayer sets. And they have said that there will be some reprints in this. So naturally my first thought is, what's a really juicy reprint that fits this theme that they've given us? And not that I actually expect them to print this, but the first one that came to my mind was Show and Tell gets infinitely more interesting when 4 people get to show and tell something in.
I'd agree.
And I think maybe not something as expensive and as powerful as Show and Tell, but there will certainly be at least 1 card in that set that is good enough to see Legacy play, simply because it will be something along the lines of a Show and Tell where it's very fair in a multiplayer environment and very unfair in a 2-player environment.
Maybe it'll be like a 5-mana Show and Tell, because in EDH that doesn't matter. I don't know. Another question was, can you speculate on the price of Deathrite Shaman now that it's been banned in Modern? Well, this is not a financial podcast, so I'm going to say if you were hoarding Deathrite Shamans, you probably are now just shit out of luck.
I agree. I think that turns Deathrite Shaman into essentially a long-term hold while you wait for it to become rarer. And being that it's a rare and not a mythic, that's going to be quite a while.
I think a lot of people also speculated on the card thinking it was going to go to $15 or $20. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm a little bit because I bought some Russian ones right before they banned it. So I probably overpaid by a little bit, but, whatever. Now I just have 9 Russian Deathrite Shamans. Oh well. So now let's move on to the last thing that we've been talking about for a while on the forums, but hasn't really come up. So, the fakes issue. I know this is a little old, but we've been busy and we haven't had time to talk about it since this story kind of broke online. But, Sam, do you want to kind of walk us through what we're going to talk about?
So, personally, I'd prefer not to talk about the effects or what we think of it or the morality or the ethics, because right now, as far as I'm concerned, what's done is done. The fakes are out there. A friend of the podcast provided us with a few cards just to take a look at. And I will say that I am not someone who obsessively checks my cards. Like, I'm not taking a loop to every card in a trade. But even to me, at least the set that we've received, it's fairly clear that they're not real. Just picking them up and looking at them, no special equipment, not even putting them next to another card. I think it's fairly clear right now.
Yeah, I don't want to go through every specific of what's wrong with them, because this is only going to make the counterfeiters do a better job. However, I think if you have experienced trading, and you've looked at cards before, and you've touched cards before, you can immediately tell that these cards are not real. They're just bad. A lot of the people came up to me and they're like, yeah, if it was in a sleeve across the table, you wouldn't notice it. But as soon as you take it out of the sleeve and look at it as if you were trading for it in person, you're 100% sure it's not correct.
And what I think that means is they can be played in tournaments. I put that in air quotes, not that we would ever recommend such a thing. But you certainly won't be trading for them unless somebody finds a way to make them less fake looking up close. Now, I don't want to downplay the significance of the possibility that you will buy or trade for some of these. Go get, I bought a jeweler's loop for $3 on Amazon, and that $3 investment will be worth it if someone tries to pass off a Tundra on you and you figure out that it's fake. But the real sign to me that this isn't a super big problem, at least yet, was I took them to the local game store to show them around. And there was a guy there he doesn't play Magic. He's not even particularly interested in Magic. But he took one look at them and he said, okay, I'm going to guess which ones are fake. And he went through and he picked them all out. Not as someone who plays Magic, doesn't trade or anything. He was immediately able to tell just from picking up draft chaff off of tables and throwing it away.
Like, even my dad, who does not play Magic, does not want to get involved in it, who thinks it's kind of stupid, still kind of says, I showed him, I put a pile out, and I mixed together real and fake, like duels and fetches, and he was able to pick out 9 times out of 10 which one was the fake one. And he doesn't look at the cards at all. Just by feel, he's like, these ones feel cheaper.
Yeah, so, like I said, I don't think, at least yet, there will be a problem in terms of you getting some from eBay or anything like that. But I do think that you'll hear of people playing them, because they are good enough that across the table, you won't be able to tell. There are sleeves now that, I think Ultra Pro makes one that has a matte face that slightly obscures the card, and that will make it even easier to play a bad fake.
I mean, let's put it this way. We were playing in a tournament on Saturday, and somebody needed to borrow some cards, and we did not have 4 Underground Seas for him to play. So, what did we do? This guy, I wanted to actually test this. So what I did is, we were just playing in a fun tournament, didn't matter. We put 4 of these fake Underground Seas in his deck, and he played, and he did not know until 3 rounds in, when he looked at them, he's like, oh, these look a little weird. Well.
And no one else noticed either?
Nope.
Interesting.
So again, playing with them, if you're not looking for them, you're probably not going to notice it. But once we took them out of the sleeves and looked at them close up, he's like, oh yeah, 100% these are. But again, it was just enough that he wasn't thinking about it, he wasn't in that frame of mind, because I just passed him the deck. And everybody else just kind of didn't say anything. We just wanted to see. So.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Probably not ethical, but I wanted to see. We must Must gather data.
Well, I'll be playing them in my EDH deck because EDH doesn't count, and I would hate to pay $115 to put a card in an EDH deck that I play like once a month.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm not even sure what you have access to, like what cards you got sent for this, but...
I've got a couple duels. I got a Force, got a Thoughtseize.
Okay. Point being, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, listeners, it's not as scary as you think it is.
Yet.
Be careful. Understand what real cards look like and feel like. Other than that, have fun.
Yep.
That's my opinion.
Cool. Yeah, we got through all of our stuff pretty quickly today. Anything else you want to talk about?
Changing face of the metagame? Upcoming predictions?
I got nothing on that right now.
Well, I mean, with the rise in miracles, what decks counter miracles?
Decks that play Cross and Grip.
Decks that play Cross and Grip and decks that play Gaddock Teeg. So, projected Gaddock... Maybe Junk, but Junk is not the greatest against True Nemesis right now. We're still trying to find a build that's very solid against it.
Yeah. I don't see Miracles becoming super, super prevalent simply because it is a very difficult deck to play.
It's also really slow. I mean, there are times...
It's very slow, and it's not just slow like it takes a long time, but it's the kind of slow where if you go to a large tournament, you should expect that you don't get any breaks all day because you will be one of the last people to finish. And there's a big difference between being one of the last people to finish and being one of the first people to finish and getting to walk around and get a water or a drink or a snack. So I don't think that you'll see it becoming super prevalent simply because it's not a deck that's easy to just have. Kind of like High Tide is like that, where I think more people would play High Tide if you could just play High Tide and win in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think the best way to play Miracles at a tournament is to actually bring somebody to be your personal assistant to hand you water and to have a catheter inserted. I think then you could really crush a tournament with Miracles. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Well, I'll be continuing to play it.
Okay, anyway, so the point being is Miracles is a good deck. You should play it with an assistant to play optimally. Yeah, I don't think Miracles is ever going to be like 10% of the metagame. Don't get me wrong, 3 in the top 8 is really good, but those are 3 very good players. I know Philip is really active on the Source. He's a really good Miracles player, and he has a pimped out deck. I think a lot of people just might have been intimidated and just, conceded to him.
Yeah, his was like JACO level pimp.
Yeah, like it was fucking ridiculous. It was really
actually
nice.
There were enough altars. I saw a couple people tweeting that if they were judges, they would not allow the amount of altars he had, because there were some that I looked at the picture and I was like, I can't really tell what he has in play.
Yeah, I'll be honest. It was a little bit much for me, at least. So, again, remember, if you're gonna bring an altar deck to a tournament, always make sure you ask the head judge to make sure it's A-okay.
I do have a tournament announcement, which I have not done one of those since like the 3rd episode.
Oh wow!
In the Houston area, Empire Central, which is actually in League City, is doing a Power Series. It's on approximately the 20th of each month, or whichever Saturday falls nearest to that. They are doing a $30 tournament. Registration at 11. Tournament starts at 1, and first prize is guaranteed a piece of power. After the 9th tournament, the 9th one is a Black Lotus on October 25th. There will also be points given based on how many tournaments you've participated in and how well you have done in the tournaments. And the prizes for that include 4 Underground Seas, 4 Forces, $150 and $100 store credit. So there's definitely some kick-ass prizes. So if you can make it to the Houston area, the first tournament for this is this weekend, February 22nd, and then every approximately the 20th from then till October.
That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'll be going... I have no need to play Time Twister in my vintage deck, but I'd certainly like to have one, so I will be attempting to win that one this coming weekend.
Well, I hope you do win it.
Well, thank you.
So, yeah, I think that's it. I think our next podcast is actually going to come live from... Not live, but, straight from California.
Yep, should be exciting. Can't wait to see you.
Yeah, it should be good. All right, well, thanks for listening, and until next time, Sam, take it away.
Thanks for listening. We appreciate your feedback. Email us at everydayeternalcast@gmail.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/everydayeternalpodcast. And follow us on Twitter @eternalmtg.